Here he is. Hello, Paul.
Greetings from a grey and damp Warrington in the northwest of England. I bet you're so jealous you can't be here with me in person.
Well,
it's great to meet you, Fiona, and everyone else who's joined.
Look, a special, first of all, thank you for joining us today, everybody online. Of course, I'm Fiona Blaney here today with you on behalf of myself, the team at Real Plus, and we are so excited and honoured to have you with us today here, Paul McGee. And there's not many times that that we'd like to trade place with the sunshine, with the for the English dreariness, but perhaps today is one of those times. But we want to say thank you so much for being here with us today. We've got hundreds of people online across Australia, and whilst we're not about to wave a magic wand, we are certainly excited to hear from you around some of the insights that you've gleaned in, of course, your career, which we'll get to in a minute.
Sure.
And excited to be with us. So, guys, of course, we have Paul McGee here, better known in my world as the Sumo Guy. And certainly today, for many of you, you will come to perhaps have the same grin when you think of Paul McGee and the Sumo Guy as I do. Paul has been a friend of mine for, gosh, Paul, I was trying to work it out. I think it's been kind of 15, 16 years, maybe even a couple more. And I remember, you know, being in your home there and sitting out in the conservatorium there, and you teaching me all about the sumo principles one-on-one. And I've never forgotten that, and I've never forgotten these principles. And of course, Paul has been working with businesses, individuals, both from adults in corporations and now right through to children and adolescents, working with them around these sumo principles, which he will share with you. He's written 11 books, and I'm going to give you all the information on that at the end of today. And you'll be very surprised. I think Bear Grylls has even been endorsing your books of late, Paul.
Yeah, I had to get the mountain to get him to do it, but we managed to do it. You know, when there's a will, there is a way.
Of course, we're taking questions as we go through and insights from you. This is an interactive session, and I've got Josh Thomas and Min Ahern's online with us as well from Real Plus, who will be moderating today's session. Paul, when I first reached out to you, there was this little moment in the back of my mind where I was aware that upcoming here in Australia was Are You OK Day? And it's one of those serendipitous moments that when you and I were talking about dates, I completely forgot about what day even Are You OK Day was on. It was just so exciting to have you, and we shared calendars, and the next minute we booked it in for the 9th of September, and I didn't think another thing about it. But here we are, by coincidence, speaking with you on some of these really important elements of not just surviving, but getting yourself through difficult times. And we're doing that on Are You OK Day? And Paul, you know, to kick us off today, I'm going to ask you the question that we're getting asked by our friends and our families, our colleagues and loved ones all across the country in Australia today. And this is a day where Australians ask each other that really important question, and it's probably never been more important. I'm going to ask you as my first question today is, Paul McGee, are you okay?
Well, as we speak, Fiona, yes, I am. But as what hit the world, obviously, last March, there have been days when, even as the motivational speaker, I have not been okay. And I just need to be honest and real about that. I think one of the challenges, apart from lockdown and seeing a business decimated, is my daughter, who'd met her soulmate and they were about to buy their own apartment. Suddenly, a few days later, he finished with my daughter. And it was a very, very painful time. And I remember I go for my morning walk, which I've already done this morning. I came into the kitchen and I've got my wife in the kitchen and she's doing FaceTime with my daughter. And all I can hear is my daughter sobbing. And then I've got to come in this office and run a motivational session for organizations. So I think, and it's interesting, the colors of Are You OK? And I don't want to get political about masks, but yeah, we need to wear our masks. And sometimes you put your happy face on. But I think we also, are you okay, is about someone's going, well, actually, no, I'm not. I'm struggling. And I'm the motivational speaker. And by the way, it's now 13 books, Fiona. It's just crazy.
Oh, 13.
But,
Right on.
I'll let you off. But here's the point. I'm the speaker. I travel around the world. I write the books. But, when we talk about gender politics and everything, do you know what I identify most as? A human. And I think we just need to sometimes go, even the motivational speakers can find it tough. Even they can have struggles in their personal lives. Yes, I'm okay, but that doesn't always mean everything's great in my life. But yes, I am okay. And sometimes you need to metaphorically drop the mask and have honest conversations with other people. You really do.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. One of the things as we're asking people this question today is that the reality is that in one moment we might be okay, but overall we might not be feeling okay. And it's and we'll talk a bit about this, I'm sure, but it's okay, as you've said, to not be okay. I think the big message I'm sharing with people today is, if you aren't okay, what's not okay is not sharing that and not allowing other people to help you.
I mean, for someone who is known as this motivational speaker, I came up with this concept called hippo time. What do hippos do in the mud? They wallow. And actually sometimes, and this is something which you rarely hear, I say to people, look, of course there's some strategies that I know can help you, but there are times you need to say, I'm just having some hippo time. To feel mad, bad, sad is okay. And I think we need to be careful of labeling emotions as positive and negative. They are emotions. And we've all probably needed our hippo time for all kinds of reasons. But one thing I say, Fiona, is, hippo time is okay, but remember, it's temporary. It's a detour. It's not a destination. But we need to give ourselves permission to have those not okay days. But also, I think what's really vitally important and can be very difficult for some people who are very independent and driven and have been successful. I say seeking support isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of wisdom. And I have, if you say some things, what's helped get you through, it's not by doing it alone. It's about doing life with other people and sometimes sharing our own struggles. But I became ill with a virus, and I'm jumping ahead here. And I've had some big moments in my life. I lost my job through ill health with chronic fatigue syndrome back in the late 1980s. And that certainly just turned my world around. Then in 2010, I had a really, really negative press coverage about my business in a national daily newspaper in the UK. And that was tough. And then I get the virus in March last year. And I remember being in this office, and I was just still working on doing the final edits of my book. You know what I said, Fiona, to myself? I said, I don't think I've got the fight anymore. Now, that was partly influenced by the fact I still had the virus and that had completely wiped me out. But I just remember thinking, I don't know if I've got the fight for the future. And I am a spiritual person, and I don't want to get woo-woo, but it was almost as if this intuitive thought came to mind, which I think we all need to embrace. You don't need the fight for the future. You just need the fight for today. And I just found, I'm feeling pretty crap here. I'm struggling with the virus. My business is decimated. And but you know what? It's about today. Okay, I'll deal with today, and we'll come to tomorrow when we get to tomorrow. And certain things like that have certainly helped me.
That's I can see we've got comments coming through. It's almost like people could jump off right now. There's so much gold there, right? I love that. You just need the fight for today, and seeking support is a sense of wisdom. Yeah, those two.
100%.
Just amazing. So talk to me about, what are you currently doing? I know you're obviously there in England, and I think you're starting to do a few live events now, which is super exciting. I'm like jelly over that. So tell me, what's the journey been like over the last 18 months now, 20 months?
Sure. Well, my business, for those who don't know, so I'm a speaker, I'm an author, I'm a coach. And yeah, I've written 13 books, and 12 of them are adult books, which normally gets people quite interested. You've written adult books, and they lean forward a bit more, and I go, no, books for adults. I talk more about neuroticism, not eroticism. And then the book, obviously, for young people. So I did live events. I would do about 120 events every year. I've spoken worldwide, 41 countries, et cetera, et cetera. So all of a sudden, it's like I make my living predominantly not through my books, but being in person. And to begin with, Fiona, I didn't know how to react. Big confession, the only laptop I had was a really old one that I sometimes took to venues to show my slides. I don't use a laptop. I've got 2 staff in the office. So it was a big readjustment. But there's a quote, isn't there, that's allegedly attributed to Charles Darwin: the future does not belong to the strongest or the most intelligent. The future belongs to those who are best able to adapt, to change. And it didn't matter how successful I had been and how many books I'd sold and how many countries I'd spoken in. Everything was a very humbling experience, and I had to relearn. I probably did about 2 Skype calls a year, and all of a sudden I'm like thinking, wow, if I want to, and in fact, my big motivation, because I've been in business now 30 years, so I built up a financial rainy day fund. So it wasn't, I need the money. And I did genuinely want to try and help other people, but in helping other people, I had to learn, what am I doing with this technology now? I'd never done a Zoom meeting and Teams and all this kind of stuff, knew so little about it. So I found it, if I'm honest, quite a humbling experience. And I gradually grew into it. So what am I doing now? I still do a lot of virtual events. I mean, literally, I've done stuff in Australia, New Zealand. I've spoken in Iran during lockdown, but then things have been changing in the UK, but we're still kind of fairly hybrid. So what I've got now is the last 5 events I've done, the last 5 events have all been in person. But again, I've still got a number of virtuals coming up. And yesterday, although I was at a hotel just near Manchester Airport, so I had only about 25 people in the room, but there were still people dialing in, and someone had this webcam perched on top of a flip chart. So I'm speaking to my audience in person and then connecting with the people who are dialing in remotely. And that has happened on the last 3 events I've done. So interesting times, but I feel very passionate about some of the ideas I talk about. When I wrote Sumo, and it came out in 2005, and I think we met around then or the year after, we didn't use the words resilience. We didn't talk about well-being, really. It was all a bit woo-woo and whale music and do a bit of yoga and light candles. And we didn't really talk about mental health. But what's been really interesting about the book that I wrote that came out in 2005 is that the ideas in it are more relevant now than they've ever been. And what I wanted to do with the young people's book is make and the young people, I thought, right, let's make this really visual and engaging and highly accessible. Lots of color, lots of illustrations. Is to take the stuff from Sumo for adults and go, kids need this as much as anybody, probably more now than ever before. So that's kind of what I'm doing, Fiona. And Australia's like my second home. And when you reached out to me, and people won't be aware of this, and the reason I do a lot of work in Australia over time is because you were the catalyst to bringing me over there in the first place when I spoke at ARIC in 2008. So that's kind of what I'm doing now.
And let's talk about the Sumo, right? Because I think Sumo to me, and I know anybody that reads it after today, and I really implore everybody to do so, audio book or whatever it might be. And I'm okay to give Paul a shameless plug because it's a quality document. We're talking 16 years ago, right? But I feel that book for me is going to remain. I use its principles in my life. I talk about hippo time with my kids, right? Would you share those principles with everybody? Whether it be, all of them or the key ones that you think have really helped people throughout this most recent time?
Yeah. And Liz, one of the things, again, from a business point of view, you've got to think about the power of brand. So I'm in the motivational space, but particularly in the UK, organizations hire people who've climbed Everest and won gold medals and walked to the North Pole unaided. And all I've done is in my past, I managed 30 women on the economy beef burger line for an organization.
Well,
and
that
so,
in itself, some people, Paul, would say is the big thing. I'm not allowed to say that because I'm a woman.
I've got the psychological scar still. The point was, I had to, how do you stand out? How do you stand out from the crowd? Because as a speaker, I didn't have the safety net of celebrity. It's like, well, even if you're but what I started to think about was, you know, how big an issue is overcoming frostbite for the general population? And I thought, I need to get really practical and just be real, be honest, and actually celebrate my relatively ordinariness. And so I've got a number of different ideas, but Sumo, which can stand for shut up, move on. And the shut up isn't meant to be aggressive, but it's about shut up, get off autopilot, stop, think and reflect. We now have an alternative definition for it: stop, understand, move on. And I think one of the things that I talk about is a formula. It's the kind of like the cornerstone. And you'll realize I've had an advertising agency design all my slides today. But the formula is simply E plus R equals O. And I want to just mention that because what those three letters stand for, it's the event plus my response or my reaction that influences the outcome. Now, at the moment, what we've all experienced is we've experienced this event. And okay, governments and state governments have dealt with things differently, but we've all had an event. Now, the outcome we all want is maybe in a sense to feel happy. That's what we're kind of after. But what is the challenge is we're kind of going, I'll be happy when the event has changed, when we're out of lockdown, when I can move more than 5 kilometers. And it's like, of course it is. We've had months and months of lockdown in the UK. I don't think it's been as strict as it has been in Australia, but we've known some pretty tough lockdowns, and in our winter, not easy. But one of the things I wanted to realize is, okay, if I keep waiting for the event to change before I'm going to get the outcome I want, I could be waiting a long time and it's out of my control. So for me, Fiona, a lot of it is about the R factor, not the X factor, but the R factor. And the R factor is, okay, how am I going to respond to some of these challenges? You know, in Latin, sumo means to choose. So we talk about shut up, move on, or stop, understand, move on. But actually, in Latin, it just means to choose. And a friend of mine, a leadership speaker called Drew Povey, says this: Paul, every day is a choose day. CHOOSE. So I think we're waiting at times to feel motivated. The key to us surviving and thriving is not whether you feel motivated. It's more about your habits. It's about those daily choices you make. I mean, I'm guessing that a lot of the people who've dialed in this morning our morning, have maybe cleaned their teeth. But when you got up this morning, it wasn't a case of, hey, come on, I feel so motivated. Get me into the bathroom now. Give me the toothbrush because I'm motivated to do my teeth. It's just like, you know what? Every single day I clean my teeth in the morning and before I go to bed. And it's almost an autopilot, but it's a thing you do, but it's a habit. And what for me I've realized is, Paul, you've got to make some daily choices. And those choices that are going to help you are not always based on how you feel. So I have this little phrase, feelings follow actions. So sometimes we're waiting for the feeling. And let's be honest, if you're in, you know, Victoria, New South Wales, whatever, your feelings with all that we've experienced have taken a huge battering. And I get that, and I've experienced that, and I've experienced a business that was decimated, a daughter that was devastated, and but if you just go, yeah, well, I'm just waiting for the feelings. Yeah, well, I'm going to acknowledge how I feel at times, and I feel low, and it's okay to not always feel okay. But then it's a case of, okay, but how are you going to respond, Paul? How are you going to respond to this? And so I've got this little phrase, master your mornings. You know, there's a Shakespeare play that says, all's well that ends well. Well, for me, all's well that starts well. So I'm in UK time. This webinar started at 7 in the morning. But at 5 o'clock this morning, I'm going for a walk. I'm listening to my podcast, you know, and it's completely dark. But by the time I'm back, I've got out and it started to get light, and I'm experiencing nature and the silence. And then just listen to a bit of my podcast. And it's like, right, I'm feeling more motivated after the action than before it. So feelings follow actions. And we've got to continually say to ourselves, okay, I can't always control the event, But where do I have some control? Well, my response and my reaction to it will also influence my outcome. And what can that involve? Things like manage your mental diet. So I talk about, avoid consuming too much CNN, constant negative news. Now I do stuff on Twitter and Instagram, and people can reach out to me on @the Sumo Guy. But what I've noticed is if I'm not careful, if I'm scrolling, particularly through Twitter, and I read a particular tweet, if I'm not careful, I start reading all the comments. And I've got to say to myself, Paul, are those comments, what I'm reading, what I'm consuming, feeding my mind? Is it making me angry? Is it making me anxious? Because if it is, I need to stop that. This isn't about putting my head in the sand and ignoring reality, but it's saying, we talk about having a good, healthy diet for our bodies, but what are we thinking? What are we reading? What are we consuming? What are we listening to? And there are mates, aren't there? Let's be honest. You've got the media, but you've got your mates as well, who are, some of them are what you might call mood hoovers. They see a bit of joy and positivity around the place and go, we need to suck that right out of here and spread a bit of misery in its place. Let me tell you, mood hoovers. A guy said to me recently, my wife's a mood hoover. I love her dearly, but she's a mood hoover. I said, what do you mean? He said, that glass, is your glass half full or half empty? He said, my wife hasn't even got a glass. And we've got it's just things like that I keep on thinking about the R factor. So I don't know if people want to make a comment or you want to come back to that, because that's only one idea, but I'll try and influence the event if I can, but there's so much out of my control. But what is in my control is how I respond and how I react. And I've got to be very proactive and very intentional about thinking about the R factor and realizing that can influence my outcome. So that's one of the big ideas. I don't know if you want to make a comment first of all.
Yeah, I think there's lots of comments coming through about Tuesday and obviously this reaction. Question for you, right? Given that you are going to have bad days, you're going to have these events and I think I love that the event right now it is causing people, because it's so unknown. And there's a great sense of a lack of control, right? There's all of this stuff is out of my control. We in New South Wales, we go to 11 o'clock Gladys, right? Gladys comes on at 11 o'clock every Thursday, and she tells us what we are and what we're not allowed to do. And she gives us, there's jokes around what color is she wearing and whether that will be it's a good day or not a good day. We're kind of many are harnessing their outcome, if you like, their mental positioning on what Gladys says at 11. So where there's this lack of this sense of control, are there elements that you could suggest? And I'm not asking you to be the guy that fixes stuff, right? But what are the tools or the things that we could go to that allow us to go, you know what, that's all outside of our control, but here are some things that are inside my control that I can utilize in the formation of my reaction.
Sure. I want to weave in, Fiona, something that connects us and actually isn't in my Sumo book. In 2008, you were part of the catalyst of helping me come to Australia and speak at the ARIC conference. And someone else who was speaking, who everyone had heard of and got the bums on the seats because no one had heard of Paul McGee, the Sumo Guy, was Stephen Covey. Now, Stephen was very, very difficult to get. He wasn't in the speaker's lounge, he had his own private room. The guy was in his mid-70s. And I just wanted a few minutes with him. And the organizer said to me, you're speaking on day 2. Paul, you've got Stephen Covey comes on to begin with, then you follow him. And I'm like, okay, great. Yeah, so I was cool on that. What was interesting, and I tried to can I get 5 minutes with him? He wasn't in the speaker's lounge, he had his own private room. Where is this guy, this guru I want to spend time with? And basically someone said to me, you ain't going to get any time with him. We've got to manage his energy and everything he's got. I could be wrong on this, but I think he might have even had a meeting with Kevin Rudd during his stay. And so he was like almost untouchable. And I just wanted 5 minutes with him. And I remember the organizer said, tomorrow morning, can you get down into the auditorium really early and do a sound check and check your slides? So I thought, yeah. And I thought, if I've been asked to do that, I wonder if Stephen Covey has. And so I got down super early. And then one of the things I said was, check my slides. I said, Stephen Covey been down yet? They went, no. I said, are you expecting him? They went, yeah, because he's showing a video. and he wants to check the video. So I just hung around. 20 minutes later, Stephen Covey walks in, and I'm thinking, and he checks his sound and slides and video. He's walking out, and I'm thinking, McGee, here's your big moment. So I raise myself up to my full height of 5'7", stride over confidently towards him and go, Mr. Covey, my name is Paul McGee. I'm the Sumo Guy. I'm speaking after you today. It's an absolute honor to meet you. And he kind of looked at me and he went, great. The Sumo Guy. You don't look like a sumo. He said, what's sumo about? And I remember saying, well, actually, I'm going to talk about sumo just after you've spoken. So you'll find out about that when you hear me speak. And he went, I won't be hearing you speak. And I'm like, thanks for your feedback, Stephen. Have you got the number of a self-esteem counsellor? And he said, I've got to go to another meeting. And I think that might have been possibly with Kevin Rudd. So we get chatting about a few things. He tells me about, he's got 52 grandchildren, right? 52 grandchildren. That's what happens when you don't got a Netflix subscription. And then I said to him, out of your 7 habits, which one is the most important? And he said, they're all of equal importance, but you've got to start with the first. And I'm like, what's the first? I can't remember. Be proactive. Now I'm going to give you, so based on what you've just said, I'm bringing in a bit of Stephen Covey's wisdom with a bit of sumo wisdom. And Covey passed away in 2012. In Be Proactive, he has these 2 circles. I went to the same design agency to do these illustrations. And maybe it looks better that way. Oh, you're thinking, oh yeah, far better. I love this, Paul. How much did you spend on this stuff, Paul?
That's amazing. I need to get the number. But
here's the point. Here's the point, as I use my little pointer. You've got this outer circle is what he calls your circle of concern. Mm-hmm. Things that concern us, but which are out of our control. Mm. You know what all of those are. But then now I've colored it in green. He didn't call it green. He just had your inner circle, which he called your circle of influence. Now I refer to that as your green zone. Mm-hmm. Now, bit of participation. You are so right when you talk about these things out of our control. Now, here's what's interesting. Our brains want to feel in control. Mm-hmm. We hate uncertainty and unpredictability. It's not good for us long term. So we have to get control. Now, Covey's point to me was when we were chatting about this, he said, in times of change and challenge, and this was a conversation from 2008, he said, you'll still spend loads of time thinking about and talking about stuff you can't do anything about, which doesn't exactly enhance your well-being. It's not good for us. And then he asked a question. So I'll tell you what, if I ask this question to the audience, are they all right to put their answer in the chat box?
Absolutely. Said, let's go chat away.
Said, are you into sport? I said, yeah, I love my football, as you'd call it, soccer. He said, you said you were earlier on, you said you're from Manchester, United or City? I went, Wigan Athletic, up the ticks. He looked a bit bemused. He said, what about motorsport? I said, it's not really a big thing of mine, to be fair. He said, well, Formula One, do you know anything about Formula One? I said, I know, we might win the Drivers' Championship. He said, well, let me ask you a question about Formula One. So here's my question to all of you now. Put your answer in the chat box. He said, after the start of the race, at which part of the race does a Formula One motor racing driver experience their greatest levels of stress? After the start of the race, at which part of the race does a Formula One motor racing driver experience their highest or greatest levels of stress or anxiety? Put your answers into the chat box.
It could be a trick question, right?
Trust me, it's not a trick question. Okay, Matthew Smith. Matthew Smith, I've seen your answer, sir. And there's oh yeah, and there was a few others now getting it. Matthew Smith, I am giving you a round of applause. I'm giving you some high fives. Some of you are going, hasn't he got weird hands?
Yeah, I get it.
It's the pit stop.
Yeah.
Pourquoi? Because I'm bilingual. Because it's that part of the race they're not in control. Mm. And we're relying on other people. So the more we kind of like are, and so Covey's point about be proactive, and I talk about green zone thinking. In other words, the opposite of being proactive is maybe just being passive. And what's Gladys going to say on Thursday? And what can we do? And I guess one of the things that is important to do, you see, life on autopilot before the pandemic kind of was, things just kind of happened. And there were lots of good things. And you'd see friends at work and you'd meet with friends for drinks and meals, and just everything was all opened up. There has never been a a more important time to get off autopilot, to be intentional, to be proactive, and to say, okay, there is stuff that is out of my control. No matter how positive I am, no matter how many personal development books I read and stuff I listen to and manage my mental diet, there is things in my white zone, reality rules. But I've got to now, every single day, go, okay, so what's in my green zone? And it's easy to go, well, you know, and I can't do this, and I can't do this, and I can't do that. I get that. I seriously get it. But you've got to say, okay, well, do I give up? You know, do I just, okay, you know, we've got the worst lockdown in the world in Victoria, pass me the t-shirt. And it's understandable and it's natural because you can feel like that. And there are genuine victims, but I'm talking about a victim mentality. Or you can say, do you know what, folks? Of course I feel a bit like this at times. Of course I have some crap days. But I've got to just think about how I'm going to respond here. And one of the ways I've got to respond is, again, I've got to decide, do I wear yellow? Or do I go green? And it's just those, what are the little things? You see, the little daily choices we make over time add up. Here's a great little phrase. Some of you got to write this one down. Consistency compounds. So you're thinking, oh, he said go for a walk, big deal, get out in some fresh air, keep connecting with people. Yeah, tell me something. Yeah, whoa. It's not sexy. And the truth is often boring. Right? So, but what I'm saying is it's not about focus on perfection. It's about progress. It's about what's in a green zone. So you said, well, what are some things in our green zone? Well, I think it is about managing your mental diet, what you decide to do. I know for some of you, you're restricted for maybe an hour's exercise. Well, take whatever kind of exercise that looks like. I prefer the word movement. So I've already done several thousand steps on my watch already. I've done about 8,000 steps, maybe about 3 miles, or I don't know, kilometers, that is 5 kilometers. But I'll triple that today. Now we're fortunate we can do more than an hour's exercise. But little things like so I have this little ritual, this little phrase: what you take to bed with you travels the night with you. I'll say that again. What you take to bed with you travels the night with you. So I don't mean your teddy bear. I mean, what's the last thing you watch, read, listen to, think about, talk about? You know, in one of my books, I talk about have your thankful for. And for is F-O-U-R. So do you know what, Fiona? Even when my daughter was sobbing on the phone, even when I had the virus, I would still, the last thing I'd think about as I went to sleep were 4 things that went well that day. 4 little things still to be grateful for. You know, I've worked in the largest slum area in Africa. It's just outside of Nairobi, called Kibera. You know, let me tell you this. They sell toothpaste in Kibera on a daily basis. You don't buy a tube, you just buy enough to put on there. You got running water, man alive. And I'm not trying to say just be grateful for what we've got. I'm just saying stop and understand that, of course, it's terrible on one level, but also be aware of this. As a species, Homo sapiens have been on this planet for around about 200,000 years. And despite what you may be thinking about or you're going through right now, and there's roughly 100 billion Homo sapiens have walked this planet, of which there's about 7.5 billion alive right now. Despite all that we're going through, Fiona, there's probably never been a better time to be alive. Can you imagine if this pandemic had happened, say, in 2006 or early 2007? iPhones didn't come out until the end of June 2007. We didn't have the technology to deal with all that we didn't have the technology that's got us through some of this stuff. So I'm like, what's in my green zone? I'm doing my walks, I'm taking my movement, I'm thinking about my thankful for, I'm thinking about my diet. Oh, here's a lovely little phrase for you. Don't hope for happy times, plan them. So it's like, well, I'll be happy when the events change. They might not be changing. I know in New South Wales, maybe you've got an exit plan now for things, maybe still different in Victoria. And you're kind of like going, but well, I'll be happy when I can get back to the AFL. I'll be happy when this happens and that happens. And some of it's out of our control, but what's in our green zone? You know, connecting with friends still in some way or another. I go for breakfast once a month, my wife and with 2 friends on a Saturday morning. And we've done that every month since the pandemic. Now, sometimes because of where things were at, we could actually meet indoors in a cafe. Other times we could only meet outdoors. And there's been plenty of times where it's been bacon butties and banter via Zoom. And you know what people say to me? Oh, it's not the same though via Zoom. Totally agree, 100%. But what's the alternative? You know, this is, of course, it's not ideal, but there is stuff still that we have access to. And so I'm a great believer also, humans need humans. So what else is in your green zone? Well, you can choose to be in contact with certain people, maybe avoid your mood hoovers, right? And just think, okay, who are the people I like to sometimes maybe spend time with via technology? I appreciate times, but who do put a smile on my face? Is it easy? No. Every day is a Tuesday, but there are little things, consistency compounds. And every day it's about saying to yourself, in your business, to your team, to your family, okay, what's in our green zone today? You know, I know that in some parts of Australia, you can hardly do anything within the real estate industry. So you go, okay, there's so much I can't do. But can I still, in my green zone, connect with people via Zoom and say, here's where we're at the moment. I want to be the best, provide the best service on the planet for you. But here's what I've got to just recognize. At the moment, there are things that are out of my control that I'd love to do, but I can't do. So all I can say to you, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, is every day I will do all I can within my green zone to help. And that might not be a lot, but I will do what I can do. I will check in, I'll Zoom. I don't know what it is, but I'll tell you something, Fiona. Maya Angelou, the late writer and activist from the States, she said this phrase, and I want to develop it. She said, people won't remember what you said. They won't remember what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel. And I agree with that, because I think people's emotions are heightened at the moment because of all that we're going through. My live event yesterday, I had a couple of people in tears, in a positive way, but I just thought people a bit, and the guy who then went to thank me could hardly say anything. He's just overcome emotionally. So of course people will remember how you made them feel at this time. You know, so when you checked in, sent that WhatsApp message, that encouraging post on Facebook, whatever, those people you keep checking up on and saying, how you doing at the moment? Are you okay? But I do actually feel, I think sometimes people will not just remember how you made them feel, but in the context of what we're in at the moment, I think they might also remember what you did. And I think they might actually remember what you said. And I've had people say to me, because I made one of my books available last year on Kindle for free called How Not to Worry. It was only in the UK, apologies. And 14,000 people downloaded that book in just over a month. All right, it's only 14,000. But a couple of people have come back to me and went, I really appreciated you doing that. And we're not, I know this might sound a bit demotivational. We're not heroes, we're humans. But we are able to sometimes do heroic acts. And sometimes those heroic acts aren't amazingly spectacular. It's that, yeah, I keep checking in. I keep seeing how you are. I keep thinking about what I can do in my green zone. Because Covey said, it's so tempting just to be here. Talk about and think about the stuff you can't do anything about. When you do that, you're out of control. It doesn't energize you. It disengages you. It disempowers you. And you've just got to go, okay, my green zone doesn't seem that big, but I'm going to focus on my green zone. And Covey's last point to me as I kind of like was, as he was leaving, he said, oh, by the way, I know this is really common sense. He said, and he didn't use the word green zone. Obviously, that's my addition. He said, the more you focus on your circle of influence, the larger it becomes. And that's something that I found helpful. That wasn't a sumoism, but I suppose it's about ditch the t-shirt, take control, take a bit of ownership of what you can do, and just resign from being general manager of the universe. You can't control everything. End of. But focus on what you can do.
But you, as you're talking, I'm thinking, that principle, what we called shut up and move on, but now obviously stop and understand. Yeah. I'm hearing, there's a few things that are playing out, particularly for our property management staff, right, or teams, and we're professionals, and we're calling them the front line of real estate, right, because they're the lettings officers in your, in your word, the lettings clerk and the management teams, and a question I have for you, they're on the phones, they're on the front line, they're dealing with, people in their most important elements, shelter and finance, right, safety, security. We're talking a lot about asking people how they are, the giving component. How do I wrap myself up so that, and do I need to wrap myself up to protect myself from all of this emotion that's kind of playing on in all the conversations around me? And maybe that might reference it to, some of the conversations, no doubt, you're having, the situations that you're encountering that other people are in. How do you continue to react appropriately and not take on the weight of the emotional weight of what's happening for people in their own circumstances?
Sure. And again, no simple answer, but a couple of things just to think about. First of all, I've actually found in the UK, the people who struggled most haven't been on the front line. They have been the people who've been, we call it furloughed. They've been at home. You see, when you're on the front line, one of the things to think about, this isn't a universal statement, but you've got some structure to your day. You've got a purpose for getting out of bed every morning. And you are engaging with humans. So whether you realize it or not, although it's incredibly tough, we kind of go, oh, they're the heroes on the front line. Of course, they're the heroes. My biggest client in the UK is the NHS, the National Health Service. Wow. I've dealt with nurses who've nursed people on COVID wards. But what's interesting is, but they've got that purpose, they've got that meaning, they've got that structure to their work. It's the people who've been at home and been furloughed who've struggled with, well, what is my purpose? What is my meaning? I haven't got a structure to my day. So it's like, you've got to find a structure. So that's worth thinking about, that it's not simply, oh, well, those are at home, it's easy for you. It's the ones on the front line, it's really tough. It's tough for us both, but in different ways. And that's worth thinking about. But also one of the things is, yes, you do. I've used this phrase for years. Self-care isn't selfish. It's crucial to your success and sanity. And I don't necessarily mean self-care means just have your hot bath and light your candles or whatever. But it's actually saying, look, so here's a phrase I use: to be at my best, I need to rest. Now, rest doesn't mean doing nothing, just get out in the hammock and take it easy. But it does mean I have to do something different and occupy my mind with something different from my work. You see, this elastic band, it wasn't designed to be like that. It was designed to be stretched and challenged and have a sense of purpose. Now, the problem some people have got is they've got loads of purpose and stretch, and other people, well, what am I supposed to do with myself at the moment? I've got cabin fever and I can't do a lot. So neither is great. You see, we need that stretch and purpose, but we've got to build in that recovery and rest. To be at your best, you need to rest. So those property managers who, how do I take on board all the, not take on all the emotion? Hey, I used to be a probation officer. I work with criminals. And what I found was often used by the other probation officers is they used humor a lot just to deal with the situation. That in a sense, life is serious, but don't take ourselves too seriously. So people needed to vent, to offload, and often humor was a great way of doing it. What wasn't a good way, I don't think, was just becoming on your own and becoming very inward. So how do you need to have what I call at times a BMW session, a bitch, moan and a whinge. You need to do that. But then you kind of go, okay, I've got that off my chest. Now what are we going to do? Can we plan some happy? Can we, what can we do in our green zone that we can do something about? So I have to say that if you don't prioritize your own well-being, if you kind of go, well, I've never needed help and I'm this and I'm that, let me tell you, I've met plenty of people who were super resilient who aren't feeling that anymore. And you've got to, it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of wisdom, because you keep on stretching and stretching and stretching and stretching, and something's going to happen. So it's about going, okay, to be my best, I need to rest, but also realize this. Resting isn't the opposite of work. It's work's partner. So I work with the Premier League football team, Manchester City, and I've watched the players train and everything. And it's not a case of, come on, we didn't win on Saturday, work harder, work harder, work harder. It's still about being strategic and about saying, okay, we're not going to overstretch them and overtrain them, because if we do, they'll be prone to injury. So we build in rest and recovery. Do you know one of the most overlooked strategies that no one is going to go, oh, that's exciting to hear, Paul, but can actually have a fundamental impact on your well-being is sleep. If you think that, I don't need some sleep, and I'm still scrolling at 2 o'clock in the morning and watching Netflix, and then I get about 4 or 5 hours, then I'm up with the kids and I'm doing this. And people are, I'm fine, Paul, I get about 4 or 5 hours, doesn't affect me. Okay, I'm just going to say this. I'll let you read into the comment. Someone else who reckons they claim that they can get by 4 or 5 hours sleep and it has no impact on their cognitive functioning is Donald Trump. I'll leave that one with you. So one of the things I've learned is actually that our brains are just as active during the night when we're asleep as during the day when we're awake. That cell regeneration takes place when you're asleep. So you're going to go, what's in my green zone? Well, I can decide that what's in my green zone is I think more about my sleep. I mean, if sleep's not a problem for any of you, you've got yourself a secret superpower. But if it is a bit more of a challenge, I would say, actually, how can you become less reactive by being a bit more rested and taking some kind of rest, either rest that re-energizes you or rest that is just something different from work where you do take a bit of time out. I'm speaking in Singapore in a couple of hours, but between this finishing and Singapore starting, I'm going to take at least an hour's break. I'm not going to be, right, let's deal with loads of emails, Helen. What else has been coming in? To be at your best, you need to rest. Self-care ain't selfish, crucial to your success and sanity. Oh, and by the way, and I know you're going to send these out.
Oh, yes.
One of my principles is called develop fruity thinking. Fruity thinking. We talk about being positive. Can I just say this, folks? No, I love motivational speakers. I'm described as one. But being told in a pandemic, just be positive, is patronizing. We need to answer this question, yes, but how? And it's not about so much positivity, although that's got its place. It's about how can I become solution focused? How can I get my way of thinking that's more fruity rather than faulty? And I know, Fiona, you're going to be distributing these out, but there are a set of these 7 questions that have helped me and have helped a lot of people in the UK to sometimes reflect on, so where is this issue on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10's death? Well, there are times when it's only a 2 and I realize it's 8s and 9s. How important will this be in 6 months? How can I influence and improve this situation? What can I learn from this? And one of the final questions is, what can I find that's positive in this situation? You need your hippo time. You need to wallow. When my daughter was so devastated, there's a massively unexpected breakup. I didn't go, well, Ruth, what you need is the 7 questions. She needs some hippo time. Do you know what I did 48 hours after she came home, though? I got a piece of paper out and I drew that. And I said to her, what Eddie did, and there's things that concern you and they're out of your control. I said, but what we're going to do, Ruthie, and I'm going to help you, gorgeous, we're going to focus on your green zone and what you can do. And then a few weeks later, she said to me, I know you didn't talk about the questions, Dad, but I've got them on my wall in my bedroom. She said, the question that really helped me was actually, what can I find that's positive in this situation? Because we hadn't bought the apartment. We just put an offer on it. He didn't finish with me at the altar. He didn't finish with me after we had kids. It's been painful. It's not taken the pain away, but it's helped me work through the pain. Those are just a few thoughts, Fiona. I'm throwing loads at you, but I'm hoping.
No, it's great. It's really interesting because I quite often in the last 18 months have started my sessions with the statement, I love COVID, right? And people kind of look at me like, you what? You know, and like, look, I don't love the devastation. I don't love the illness. I don't love the financial implications, you know, but I love what it means to me because I haven't been on a plane in 18 months and I've been closer with my kids. And my daughter looked at me the other day and said, oh, Mum, I'm really going to miss COVID. And I said, why is that? She said, because I just love spending time with our family, you know, and I think stopping and appreciating some of those elements, you know, some of them perhaps people have gone on for a little too long, but there's certainly some positivity in that. Paul, you just mentioned your daughter, and I just want to quickly pivot for a second and before we wrap up, the children, right? And children are children, whether they're 3 years or they're 30 years. You've started doing some work, obviously, in that space. And for those of us that are online today and, you know, we've got kids, what would be maybe, you know, 1, 2, or 3 things that you think that we've discussed today would be most impactful, or perhaps there's something else completely to talk to our children about?
I think one of the things to be aware of is because we so want the best for our children, and because we've gone through this global pandemic, and isn't it terrible, is we need to actually manage ourselves well, because actually our anxiety, they'll pick up on that. So one of the things, again, is about, I would say sometimes calmer parents lead to calmer kids. So we have to be very, very careful how we frame all of this. And isn't it terrible? And isn't it awful? And you haven't had a chance to see your friends. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Because of technology, they can be connecting with each other in a way they haven't been, they couldn't do previously before they had this technology. They will be spending a bit more time with family and friends now. I've got the advantage in the UK of I'm now doing work with teachers, especially, and children have returned to school. And I'm not trying to diminish this, but what I'm saying is we can go that this is the most terrible thing and they'll never recover. And yes, there can be some mental health issues, but there was always mental health issues with some kids and dealing with anxiety and bullying, et cetera, before this pandemic. And I've got this phrase at times, when you change the frame, you change the game. So we're going through a challenge and we've got to look at, it's almost like we're playing a game here. And it's like we're playing the game of snakes and ladders. And sometimes you land on a snake. Does that mean you've lost the game and the game's over? No, it means you've landed on a snake. So you've got to keep rolling the dice, look for the ladders, keep going. And I think sometimes so we don't want to just pretend it's not really that bad, COVID. And we are acknowledging it's been a challenge, but I think parents can view this in a far more serious, and it's going to ruin the whole of their lives. I think there's a highly good chance it's not. That things will have happened that will have shaped them, that they'll, let's just think about this. What memories do you hope you are creating in COVID, that when your kids look back on this time, they look back with a sense of, oh, do you remember when we did this? And do you remember when we did that? And Dad learned to cook, and Dad had never cooked before. And do you remember when we had those movie nights, and when we did this, and we gather around the telly for this, and we do that, and we played those board games that we never really did. And do you remember when we had that? Well, and it's like, what memories will you create? And I think we've got to be careful that we don't feed fear into our children. So what's in our green zone? Realize that it's not the event, it's how we respond and react that influences the outcome. In other words, our outcomes are flexible. The future is flexible. It's not set carved in concrete. But also, hey, I mean, I don't make any money from this, because any profits we make from the Yes book go to a mental health charity. But yeah, if you think this could be useful, grab a copy of the book. Talk about, if they're 17, don't walk in and go, you need to read this, I've heard him on a webinar. But you might just leave it hanging around the house. But if your children are probably 8, 9, 10 upwards, you might just say, I heard this guy, let's maybe just have a little look at it. A bit quirky. Hey, tells you things about this guy. Do you know this guy doesn't have any toenails on his big toes? How weird is that? Enjoy your lunch later on, kids. And then other things. And then you start to, oh, cool, and his mum and dad got divorced when he was 5. That must have been difficult. Oh, he's talking to us now about how our brains work. And he's talking to us about hippo time. He's talking about beach ball. Let's talk about beach ball. And you kind of in there I talk about, you're seeing the situation, it's red, yellow, and orange. But isn't it interesting? Because I'm looking at the same thing as you, but I'm seeing something completely different. And maybe actually someone else is seeing the same thing, but it's blue, white, and green. And maybe if we took time out to understand where each other's coming from, we see things more clearly. So there's lots of simple things we can do that could help our children and help them to talk. But when you change the frame, you change the game. And if you're framing this as it's terrible, it's awful, fear, 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 they'll pick up on that. So I'm not saying be blasé, I'm saying be responsible. And also, it's not just about me, it's about we, it's about us. So what do we do as a family, not just to support us? What do we do to support our community? What little things could children do? In the UK, we've so many homes have these little drawings of thank you NHS with a rainbow. Oh, wow. So they're getting children not just to think about them, but what are we doing to help other people? What about that old lady down the road? Do we want to help with her shopping? Do some of her shopping? Because she's not going to be able to do her exercise, or he's not going to do his exercise for a full hour a day. But what things we could do? We write little letters too. So I just think green zone, be proactive, get creative, and frame it in a healthy, not unhealthy way.
Paul, there's so many great things that have come out of our session today. I think if I was to recap, I'd need another hour just quietly, but the host job's to do that. So, and I know that there's been a number of people that are chiming in and popping down their own thoughts. Stop, understand, move on. Event plus reaction equals the outcome. Making sure that we're looking at how we respond. Every day is a Tuesday. I'm going to be using that one. That's another one. And I have to say, I would like my children to clean their teeth in the same motivated manner as you've shared today.
It's just a habit. They don't have to be motivated.
I'd love that. That's great. I'm going to replay that part for them. Look, the mental diet, I think that's so important. And many of you that know me online would probably be quite interested to know, or surprised to know, that I often get asked, Paula, what are you reading? What podcast are you listening to? What book? And, my husband, he's an avid reader, and he's got the stack of books. He's constantly getting book deliveries. And I'll say two things. I'll say, I'm not listening to anything. And I'm not reading anything, because my brain actually needs to completely shut off. And during this last few weeks, this is kind of that authentic statement. But the thing that's helped me sleep is actually a couple of pages of John Grisham before I fall asleep of a night, right? Because my brain just goes into a fantasy world, and it completely detaches. And I really think that obviously that is just so important. Master your mornings, acknowledge your feelings. CNN, constant negative news. Social media's just got. We say social media's got a lot to answer for. Our interaction with it is obviously what we can control. The mood hoover. I got rid of a lot of people that were mood hoovers in my life. I call them the sappers, and they've been unfriended many times over the years. And I think that's so important. The green zone, kudos obviously to your marketing department. I will be talking to them about those beautiful design slides. But being proactive in that green zone and doing it with intent, just even that, if we do nothing else, taking away from today, it's everything that we do, if we do it with intent. And therefore it's a conscious decision around what we're doing, knowing that our reaction is going to determine part of that outcome. And understanding that doing that consistency is so vital with that. I love the thankful for. We often talk about gratitude and writing a journal, and sometimes these big elements of it almost feels draining to start the process. But if I'm just laying in bed and I'm going, right, what's my thankful for today? Writing it down's another step. happy times, plan them. I think it's great. We're planning happy times. We had a little Mexican fiesta here for Father's Day, and my husband said to me, he goes, you know what, this Father's Day was actually the best Father's Day we've had, because we were just here, and it was just us, and we had fun, and we weren't overthinking it, and we had really connected time with loved ones via Zoom. And so self-care is central to your success and sanity. Like I said, that's be at my best. I
took a lot of notes there, Fiona.
I did. That's my pen was going mad, because there is so much value in what you've spoken about. And like I said at the beginning, I'm really passionate about you and your story, and these things. You don't have to do all of it. Just do one part,
Absolutely.
BMW moment with your girlfriend when you get to go for your walk, or, occupying your mind. And I think, that last comment that I've written down, or last two things, change the frame, change the game, and the future is flexible. Paul, on behalf of everybody tonight, I know that you have helped us change our frame for today. I'm sure that many houses will be a nicer place this evening, all because of that. And I hope that everybody takes these learnings into the future. Of course, there's been lots that we've spoken about, so we will make this, we've recorded today, so we will make this available. I know that Paul's very passionate about ensuring these messages get into the hands of the people that need it. And of course, that's why, you gave that book, the Why Worry book, How Not to Worry, book available to people in the UK, because you do genuinely care. And guys, jump on to the Sumo website. And of course, I'm going to email you after this session with all of these things, including the recording. The sumoguy.com is Paul's web address, and all of his books are available through leading outlets, including, of course, Amazon. And when you jump onto his site, you'll see that product section. And Paul, I am giving you a push, because these are so very important. I know many of you who know me, you'll know why Paul is here today. And Paul, for what it's worth, there's some pretty significant people online today who I know have got a huge workload that they are carrying, big business owners, industry professionals, industry body heads who have been on here today. And guys, that's because many of them have heard you speak probably back in 2008 and on from there. So for those of you that are, of course, joining us today, if there are any concerns that you do have, or you have friends and family that need that extra level of support, know that it is there. Lifeline, Beyond Blue, two fantastic organisations that if you do need that little bit extra today, then please don't be afraid, because as we know, reaching out and asking for help is certainly a part of that self-care process. And we are all here as part of this Real Plus community to help you with that as well. Paul, thank you so much for being with us. Enjoy the rest of your day. I know that you're online again. Where are you traveling? Singapore in a couple of hours?
Singapore for a conference in Asia. So China, Thailand, Malaysia, etc. But we'll have a good time. But guys, well, one, always thanks to you, Fiona, because you brought me to Australia in the first place. Privileged to share some stuff and time with you folks. And I just wish you well in all you're going through. And I hope in the not too distant future, I get back onto that Aussie soil and maybe see you in person as well. It would be wonderful to do so.
Well, you're always welcome here with me, Paul. So thank you very much. And all the best to you and your family as well.
All right. Thank you very much. Take care, guys. Thank you.